The year is 1099. The Crusader army led by Godfrey of Bouillon defeated and drove off an Egyptian Fatimid army, securing the safety of Jerusalem. The first Muslim attempt to recapture the city ended in complete defeat, but Godfrey failed to exploit the victory and take Ascalon, whose Fatimid garrison was willing to surrender only to Raymond of Toulouse, a condition Godfrey would not accept. The Fatimid base in Ascalon remained a thorn in the side of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The Crusaders were not a unified force, but rather a coalition of different European nobles and knights who had different motives and goals, creating conflict and tension. The oldest and the richest of the Crusaders, Raymond of Toulouse, was deeply religious and wished to die in the Holy Land. So when the call was raised for the First Crusade, he was one of the first to take the cross. But his support had waned since his failed attempts to besiege Acre and create his own realm. Perhaps it was this diminished influence that prompted his virtuous refusal of the crown when the Kingdom of Jerusalem was established, citing that only Christ could rightfully wear such a symbol. This gesture may have aimed to dissuade others from coveting the title, but in stark contrast, Godfrey readily embraced the leadership role without hesitation. Probably more persuasive was the presence of the large army from Lorraine, led by Godfrey and his brothers, Eustace and Baldwin, vassals of the Ardennes-Bouillon dynasty. Godfrey assumed the title of Defender of the Holy Sepulchre as the leader. As winter descended in 1099, Raymond's journey north took a hostile turn when he captured Latakia from Bohemond. His path then led him to Constantinople, where he forged an alliance with Alexios, the formidable adversary of Bohemond. At that time, Bohemond was aggressively expanding Antioch into Byzantine territory and openly defying his oath to the Byzantine Empire, refusing to return any captured land. Dagobert, the Pope's representative, wanted to make the Patriarch more powerful, and he asked Godfrey to give him Jerusalem. Godfrey agreed to some extent, and on Easter Day, the 1st of April 1100, he said that he would keep Jerusalem until he died, or until he took over 2 big cities from the enemy. But he left Jerusalem to the Patriarch in his will. However, Godfrey died in July, when Dagobert was accompanying a campaign against Jaffa under Bohemond's nephew, Tancred, and the Jerusalem Knights offered the lordship to Baldwin, who was Godfrey's brother. With the support of Tancred, Dagobert wrote offering the lordship of Jerusalem to Bohemond, but the letter was intercepted. Meanwhile, Bohemond got a request for assistance from Gabriel of Melitene, an Armenian leader. Gabriel had one of the main cities that controlled the entrance to Anatolia, and he heard that the Danishman Ghazi of Sebastia was planning to attack Melitene. The Armenians asked Bohemond for help, and even promised to give him the leader's daughter as a wife. Bohemond wanted to expand his territory northwards, but he was scared to leave Antioch with fewer troops. In August 1100, he went north with only 300 knights and a few infantrymen. He did not send any scouts ahead, and the Turks surprised him and surrounded him at the Battle of Melitene. Bohemond was able to send for help from Baldwin of Edessa, but he was taken prisoner. He was put in chains and locked up in Neo-Caesarea. Baldwin hurried to Melitene and pursued the Danish men for 3 days, but he was unable to rescue Bohemond. After his return, the Armenian lord of Melitene, Gabriel, swore fealty to him. Baldwin appointed 50 knights to defend the town. News of Godfrey's death reached Edessa shortly after Baldwin's return from Melitene. Baldwin left Edessa with 200 knights and 700 infantrymen on the 2nd of October 1100. He stayed in Antioch for 4 days, but he refused to take charge of the principality while Bohemond was in prison. Tancred rushed to Jerusalem to get the garrison to give up the town to him, but he was not allowed to enter. Baldwin arrived in Jerusalem around the 9th of November. Dagobert moved to a monastery on Mount Zion, and the people of the town met Baldwin outside the walls and escorted him to the Holy Sepulchre. Baldwin first attacked the area around Ascalon, which was still under Egyptian control, then went after the bandits who hid in the caves near Jerusalem. He then made peace with Dagobert, who agreed to crown him king. The ceremony happened in the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem on Christmas Day. The new kingdom of Jerusalem needed more troops, and Pope Paschal, who followed Pope Urban, called for a new campaign. He especially called on those who had promised to go on a crusade but had never left, and those who had run away on the way. Some of these people were already looked down on at home and felt a lot of pressure to go back to the east. This crusade was also known as the Crusade of the Faint-Hearted. Like in the First Crusade, the pilgrims and soldiers left in different groups from different places in Western Europe, not as one big army. In September 1100, a large group of Lombards left from Milan. These were mostly untrained peasants, led by Anselm IV, Archbishop of Milan. When they reached the territory of the Byzantine Empire, they pillaged it recklessly, and Byzantine Emperor Alexios escorted them to a camp outside Constantinople. This did not satisfy them, and they made their way inside the city, where they pillaged the Blascherni Palace, even killing Alexios's pet lion. The Lombards were quickly ferried across the Bosporus and made their camp at Nicomedia to wait for reinforcements. In May 1101, a smaller but more powerful group of French, Burgundians and Germans joined them at Nicomedia. Raymond IV of Toulouse, who was working for the Byzantine Emperor, also joined them there. He was made the leader, and a Byzantine group of Pecheneg fighters went with them. They left at the end of May, heading for Dorylaeum, on the same way that Raymond had gone in 1097 during the First Crusade. They wanted to go on to Iconium, but the Lombards, who had more people than the other groups, wanted to go north to Neo-Caesarea, where the Danishmends had Bohemond of Antioch as a prisoner. The Crusaders took Ancira on the 23rd of June 1101 and gave it back to Alexios. Then they went north. However, they came under attack from the Seljuk Turks, who harassed them for weeks. The Lombards pressured the whole army to leave the safe Black Sea coast and go east again, to the land of the Danishmends, and to save Bohemond. But the Seljuks under Kilij Arslan knew that they had failed to stop the First Crusade because they were not united, and they had now joined forces with the Danishmends and Ridwan of Aleppo. The Crusaders faced this big Muslim army at Mercivan in early August. The battle took place over several days. On the first day, the Turks cut off the crusading army's advances and surrounded them. On the fourth day, the Crusaders tried hard to get out of the trap that they were in. The Lombards, in the front line, were defeated. The Pechenegs ran away. The Crusader camp was captured, and the knights fled, leaving women, children, and priests behind to be killed or enslaved. Raymond and other leaders fled north to Sinop and returned to Constantinople by ship. Soon after the Lombard contingent had left Nicomedia, a separate force under William II of Nevers arrived at Constantinople. He had crossed into Byzantine territory over the Adriatic Sea from Bari, and the march to Constantinople was free of incident, an unusual occurrence for a crusade army. He quickly marched out to meet the others, but in fact never caught up with them, although the two armies must have been close to each other on numerous occasions. William briefly besieged Iconium but could not take it. and he was soon ambushed at Heraclea Sibistra by Kilij Arslan, who had just defeated the Lombards at Mercivan and was eager to stamp out these new armies as soon as possible. At Heraclea, almost the entire contingent from Nevers was wiped out, except for the Count himself and a few of his men. As soon as William II left Constantinople, a third army arrived, led by William Nanais of Aquitaine. Accompanying them was Ida of Austria, mother of Leopold III of Austria. They had pillaged Byzantine territory on the way to Constantinople and had almost come into conflict with the Pecheneg mercenaries sent to stop them. From Constantinople, the Aquitanian-Bavarian army split in two, with one half travelling directly to Jaffa by ship. The rest, travelling by land, reached Heraclea in September, and, like the previous army, were ambushed and massacred by Kilij Arslan. William escaped. The survivors eventually arrived at Tarsus. Ida disappeared during this ambush and was presumably killed. William of Nevers also escaped to Tarsus and joined the rest of the survivors there, as did Raymond of Toulouse. By now, the crusade was more of a pilgrimage. The survivors arrived at Antioch at the end of 1101, and at Easter in 1102 arrived in Jerusalem. Afterwards, many of them simply went home, their vow having been fulfilled, although some remained behind to help King Baldwin defend against an Egyptian invasion at Ramla. The defeat of the Crusaders allowed Kilij Arslan to establish his capital at Iconium, and also proved to the Muslim world that the Crusaders were not invincible, as they appeared to be during the First Crusade. The Crusaders and Byzantines each blamed the other for the defeat, and neither of them were able to ensure a safe route through Anatolia, now that Kilij Arslan had strengthened his position.